China's latest moves in waters surrounding Taiwan are drawing international attention and raising fresh questions about the future of regional security in the Western Pacific. What began as a diplomatic initiative between Japan and the Philippines has quickly evolved into a broader geopolitical confrontation involving Beijing, Taipei, Tokyo, and Manila. At the center of the dispute is a decision by Japan and the Philippines to begin formal discussions on maritime boundary delimitation. While both countries describe the talks as a legal process conducted under international law, China views the move very differently. Beijing argues that the proposed negotiations involve waters connected to Taiwan, which China claims as part of its territory. That disagreement has now moved beyond diplomacy and into visible action at sea. Over the past several days, Chinese Coast Guard vessels have been operating in waters east of Taiwan. Chinese authorities described the deployment as a law enforcement mission and linked it directly to the planned maritime talks between Japan and the Philippines. According to Chinese officials, the patrols were intended to defend what Beijing considers its sovereign rights and interests. The development immediately sparked concern across the region because it came at a time when tensions were already rising around Taiwan and the South China Sea. For many observers, the key question is simple. Has China decided to send a warning to both Japan and the Philippines? The answer appears to be yes. Chinese officials made it clear that the patrols were not routine maritime operations. Instead, they were directly connected to the announcement made by Tokyo and Manila. Chinese authorities stated that this is a necessary action in response to Japan and the Philippines unilaterally initiating maritime boundary negotiations in waters east of China's Taiwan island. That statement left little doubt about Beijing's intentions. China wanted both countries to understand that it strongly opposes any negotiations involving waters that Beijing believes fall within its claims. The issue itself revolves around maritime delimitation. In simple terms, delimitation is the legal process through which countries establish maritime boundaries for their exclusive economic zones and continental shelves. Such agreements are common around the world and are generally negotiated peacefully under international law. Japan and the Philippines announced that they would begin formal discussions regarding these boundaries. Both governments emphasized that the talks would be conducted in accordance with international legal principles, but China immediately rejected the move. Beijing argued that the area under discussion includes waters east of Taiwan and therefore touches on issues connected to Chinese sovereignty claims. As a result, China's response was swift. Instead of limiting itself to diplomatic protests, Beijing dispatched Coast Guard vessels into strategically sensitive waters. The message was unmistakable. China wanted to demonstrate its presence. It wanted to show that it would not remain silent while neighboring countries discussed maritime boundaries in areas connected to Taiwan. Taiwan, however, was equally quick to react. Taiwanese authorities described the Chinese patrols as provocative and accused Beijing of increasing pressure on the island through maritime operations. Taiwan's defense minister, Wellington Koo, characterized the patrols as a deliberate challenge and emphasized that Taiwan would continue coordinating closely with its Coast Guard to protect its interests. The situation became even more tense when Taiwanese authorities reported additional encounters involving Chinese government vessels near Taiwan's southern waters. According to Taiwan's Coast Guard, several Chinese government ships entered restricted waters southwest of Taiwan before being confronted and eventually forced to leave the area. Taiwan deployed multiple Coast Guard third vessels during the incident and described the operation as a successful expulsion of the Chinese ships. The confrontation may not have involved military warships, but it highlighted a growing trend across the region. More disputes are now being carried out by Coast Guard's maritime law enforcement agencies and government vessels rather than traditional naval forces. This approach allows countries to project power and assert claims without crossing the threshold into open military conflict. Yet the risks remain significant. Even a small miscalculation at sea can quickly escalate. A collision, an aggressive maneuver, or a misunderstanding between crews could trigger a wider crisis. That possibility explains why regional governments are monitoring these developments very closely. For the Philippines, the timing is especially important. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has continued pursuing closer security cooperation with allies and partners across the Indo-Pacific. Relations between Manila and Tokyo have expanded significantly in recent years. Defense cooperation has grown, security dialogues have intensified, joint activities have become more frequent. Both governments increasingly describe one another as strategic partners. Against that backdrop, maritime boundary discussions carry significance beyond technical legal matters. They symbolize deeper cooperation between two countries that share concerns about regional security. China sees that trend with increasing concern. From Beijing's perspective, stronger ties among Japan, the Philippines, and other regional partners contribute to a broader strategic environment that China views as unfavorable. Chinese officials have repeatedly criticized efforts that they believe are aimed at constraining China's influence. That concern becomes even greater when Taiwan enters the picture. Taiwan remains one of the most sensitive issues in Chinese foreign policy. Beijing maintains that Taiwan is part of China and has consistent. You posed any actions that could be interpreted as treating Taiwan as a separate sovereign entity. Taiwan rejects those claims and insists that its future should be determined by its own people. As a result, any discussion involving waters around Taiwan immediately becomes politically charged. This explains why China reacted so strongly to the Japan-Philippines announcement. For Beijing, the issue is not merely about maritime boundaries. It is connected to sovereignty, it is connected to territorial claims, and it is connected to China's broader strategic competition in the region. Recent events suggest that China's maritime activities are not limited to one location. Taiwan has reported several incidents involving Chinese Coast Guard and research vessels around the Taiwan-controlled Pratas Islands in the South China Sea. Taiwanese officials describe these operations as part of a pattern of increasing pressure designed to assert Chinese jurisdiction over disputed waters. The Pratas Islands have become an increasingly important focus because of their strategic location. Though remote and lightly defended, they occupy a position near major maritime routes and are viewed by security analysts as particularly vulnerable. Taiwan says Chinese vessels have repeatedly entered surrounding waters and ignored warnings to leave. Beijing, meanwhile, continues asserting its claims. The result is a cycle of patrols, warnings, counter-warnings, and growing mistrust. At the same time, tensions remain high elsewhere in the region. The Philippines is currently investigating reports regarding a possible structure near Scarborough Shoal, one of the most contested maritime features in the South China Sea. Philippine authorities have said they are taking the reports seriously and are working to verify developments through surveillance and monitoring efforts. These overlapping disputes create a complex strategic environment. No single incident exists in isolation, and maritime patrol near Taiwan can influence diplomatic discussions in Tokyo. A confrontation near Scarborough Shoal can affect security planning in Manila. A Coast Guard operation in the South China Sea can trigger reactions from multiple governments across the region. This interconnected reality explains why recent events are attracting so much attention. Adding to the broader picture are China's naval activities in nearby waters. Japan recently reported that China's aircraft carrier Liaoning and accompanying vessels conducted operations east of the Philippines in the Western Pacific. The exercises involved significant aircraft activity and highlighted China's growing ability to project power far from its mainland coastline. While those drills were separate from the current dispute, they reinforced the perception that China is increasing its maritime presence across a wide area of the Western Pacific. For neighboring countries, that trend is impossible to ignore. Japan is strengthening its security partnership. The Philippines is modernizing defense cooperation with allies. Taiwan is expanding coordination between military and Coast Guard forces. China, meanwhile, continues asserting what it views as legitimate sovereign rights. Each side believes it is acting defensively. Each side accuses others of changing the status quo, and each side continues taking steps designed to protect its interests. That combination creates an environment where tensions can rise quickly. Still, despite the strong rhetoric, it is important to note that none of the governments involved have indicated any desire for direct military conflict. The disputes remain centered on legal claims, maritime patrols, diplomatic protests, and strategic signaling. The challenge is ensuring that these confrontations remain manageable. History has shown that maritime disputes often become dangerous, not because leaders seek war, but because unexpected incidents occur during periods of heightened tension. For now, the immediate curation remains focused on China's reaction to the Japan-Philippines maritime boundary talks. Beijing has delivered a clear warning. Tokyo and Manila appear determined to continue discussions. Taipei has condemned Chinese patrols and vowed to defend its waters. As a result, attention across the region is now focused on what happens next. Will China continue expanding Coast Guard operations near Taiwan? Will Japan and the Philippines proceed with negotiations despite Beijing's objections? Will additional incidents occur in contested waters? Those questions remain unanswered. What is clear, however, is that the Western Pacific has entered another period of heightened maritime tension. The latest patrols, diplomatic exchanges, and confrontations are not isolated events. They are part of a broader struggle over sovereignty, security, influence, and the future balance of power in one of the world's most strategically important regions. And as the situation continues to evolve, governments across Asia and beyond will be watching closely to see whether diplomacy can contain the tensions or whether new confrontations at sea will push the region into even more uncertain waters.